Hello again, and welcome to a financial thought leadership podcast, Banking on Experience, sponsored by CRMNEXT, the banking CRM, where we simplify work, drive growth, and deliver on experience. This podcast is meant to empower individuals working in the financial industry with stories, experiences, and knowledge straight from the source. Please take a moment to rate, review, and subscribe on your favorite podcast platform, and stay tuned for an awesome show. Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Banking on Experience. I'm your host, James Gilbert. Today I'm joined by Juan Fernández Ceballos. Juan, welcome to the show. Thank you for joining us on the show and being a part of this. Juan happens to be the president and CEO of Credit Union Association of New Mexico, and he's also the host and creator of the Unscripted Happy Hour, which we're going to talk about today. We're also going to be talking about a little bit of short-term lending and how to fast track it. Thank you for joining us today, Juan.
Thank you so much, James. It's such a pleasure. It's such an honor. I'm really thankful for you to have invited us, and I'm really looking forward to our conversation.
I actually got introduced to Juan by Denise Wymore, and she told me about the Unscripted Happy Hour, and I've been one of those lurkers in the background just watching, and I've thoroughly enjoyed it. So I can't wait to talk about it because I think that it's such a cool thing that you've done. But before we do that, let's get to know you on a little bit of a personal level. Juan, if you had your perfect day outside of work, what would it look like?
I would probably be traveling and eating some really great food, probably in the Caribbean where I'm from, with some great friends and family. That would probably be my perfect day out of work.
And what's your top dish? If you had to pick your top dish of food, what would it be?
In Dominican Republic, where my parents are from, in Puerto Rico, where I was born and raised, rice and beans are king. So I love me some good rice and beans with some good seasoning. So that's probably my go-to any day.
Love it. It's funny because my kids, when we go to different restaurants and stuff, like some of them really love rice and beans. Other of them hate rice and beans, so they'll like order nothing. Man, I'm a huge fan. I would have rice and beans for every meal if I could. Big fan. Well, so today we're going to be talking about the story behind the Unscripted Happy Hour, but we're also going to be talking about this short-term lending idea. First of all, I want you to just lay the groundwork and tell us the story of why you created the Unscripted Happy Hour and how it became what it is today.
Thanks for that question, James. And it's interesting because sometimes I know when I have some ideas that I know are going to be good, like you can know from the outset. And I feel that was the way that it was with Unscripted. I was having a conversation with Lois Kitch back late last year, and she was just talking about the power of networks and the fact that for some of us in credit unions, it's fascinating because we have friends in so many different geographies. That conversation stuck in the back of my mind, and I was having a conversation with a CFO in Spokane, Washington in early January. And I was thinking like, boy, it'd be great to introduce him to this other friend of mine who lives in New Mexico. And then I got to thinking, it's right now, we really miss each other. We were lacking a sense of community, and we really, I feel, miss those opportunities to network and learn from each other. I like to compare it to those conversations we'd have at the end of the day during the Governmental Affairs Conference in DC. After a long day of meetings, we'd get together with other friends and thought leaders, and as I joke, we solve all the world's problems. So we were missing that. And I'm like, what if I just start having these Zoom meetings and invite some people and have a conversation and kind of just do that? And people can get to know each other, they can network. And I was imagining that for the first happy hour conversation, we would have maybe 15, 20 people tops. And that to me was pretty important because I'm like, I wanted to be a place where people can have meaningful connections and an opportunity to get to know each other. And lo and behold, like within hours, we had maybe 20 people already registered. So I'm like, that's not going to work. So that's how Unscripted began. And because I wanted to create those intimate and meaningful connections, eventually we decided to have breakout rooms, which was, I think, the recipe for it all, because it was never really going to be about me or even about the featured guests. It was going to be about the community of the people that came together to meet each other and learn from one another. And that's what we've been able to do through those breakout sessions.
I've attended a few of them, and I love the conversations that are happening on those. I just think that they're very real. They remind me actually a little bit of, I serve in a community for marketers for other CMOs, and we do something similar. We try to keep the meetings very small in nature on purpose, because the larger the meeting gets and the more people that are in there, the less likely you're going to have participation and people feeling willing to share some of the challenges that they might have. So I love the fact that you've done that. One of the things that I do think it's important, like, if you're at a credit union anywhere in this nation, I think that the Unscripted Happy Hour is something that you should try to attend. So how can people find it? Because that was a challenge for me. If Denise wouldn't have told me about it, I wouldn't have known about it.
I know, it's this little secret group, this little secret community. So the best way to find it is to find me on LinkedIn. You can, search for me on LinkedIn, Juan Fernández. So in the beginning of the year, we were doing them weekly, and we were in the height of the lockdowns. We were in the winter, and here we are in summer. So we're doing them once a month now. And then I expect that when the fall comes, we're going to start ramping them up again and probably doing them 2 or 3 times a month instead of just once a month. We're going to be announcing the next one in the coming week or so. So this is going to be pretty timely depending on when this conversation airs. But finding me on LinkedIn is probably the best way to do so. And, kind of looking through the activity. You could also, in that LinkedIn, I also post all the Vimeo links so people can go back and watch the previous conversations that we've had, because we've had some really awesome guests and great conversations. Unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on how you look at it, we don't record the breakout conversations because we really want that to be a private setting where people can open up, can get to know each other, can ask the questions that are in their minds without the fear of having it show up on the internet. But you can still get a sense of the general topics and guests that we've had at the happy hours.
Yeah, I think it's a great format. If you need a reminder, find him on LinkedIn. That's the best way to find it. It will be very obvious. You'll be able to see it just fine. Talk to me a little bit about some of the successes that you've heard from the Unscripted Happy Hour. Like, what have you heard? What's your feedback been? What are the good, bad, and ugly?
I think the best successes are, like, all the time people reach out to me and they're like, oh my gosh, I met so-and-so and we're working on XYZ project because we met each other during the happy hours. So to me, that's been, I think, the best success is like just connecting people that are working on awesome things and getting to know each other. The other thing on a personal level that I'd say that has been very meaningful to me is we need to do as a movement, we have been struggling for a long time, probably for decades, on how do we lower the average age of members. And I think it starts with engaging our younger employees and making sure that they see themselves having a career and being able to build a career in our movement and not just a job. And I remember after probably one of the first happy hours, probably the 3rd or 4th happy hour conversation we had, I got a text message from a teller at the credit union I was working at, and he's in his mid-20s. And he sent me a text message and basically said, I'm so glad I attended, because now I can really see myself staying in credit unions and building a great passion for this as a movement and not just as a job. And to me, that meant a lot, because the reality is I think we spend so much time, energy, and resources training people that are not facing our members every day. And it's oftentimes those tellers and those frontline workers that are truly having the most meaningful conversations and contact with our members day in and day out. So if we can find ways to inspire them and to see the bigger picture and to really see how they are touching lives every day, I think we're going to do great things as a movement, and we're going to be able to more effectively tackle that issue of lowering that age of membership and really bringing the great gift of credit unions and cooperative banking to more people that need us. Because at the end of the day, every day, as you just open the newspaper almost every day, and you'll read stories of other financial sectors that take advantage through predatory lending practices of consumers. And that's what credit unions were meant to serve, and those needs that they were meant to fill. And I think it starts by really engaging with our employees and really creating that movement that reaches out.
Juan, one of the things that we had talked about when we were talking about even doing this episode was short-term lending. And this idea of short-term lending does have a significant role with the younger generation, because the younger generation oftentimes doesn't have the credit that the older generation has. So you've got to look at short-term lending options. So you've tied it in a little bit, but I want to hear from your perspective, like, why are you passionate about that particular topic in general?
So first of all, credit unions need to be not just surviving, but we need to thrive. And in order for us to do that, we need to be relevant. We need to keep the purpose constant. And one of the things, as Edward Felina obviously famously said, one of the things that worries me is that we need to do a better job making sure that we know what online lenders are doing. And all you have to do is turn on the TV and you will see that almost every online lender and online bank, for that matter, online financial institution, is doing this. They are providing tools so that you can get your paycheck early, so that you can access your funds maybe 3-4 days before your actual paycheck. And they're not just doing that out of the fondness of their hearts. They have plenty of research that shows that people need capital during that gap, and they need access to, as you mentioned it, as you called it, the short-term lending. And I think credit unions, that's what we were started out doing, is basically people that worked in the same place pooled their resources and they would lend to each other because nobody else would lend to working people. They would take their money, but they wouldn't lend to them. So we have an opportunity to not just offer this because it's a good thing to do, which it is. I think we are saving people from going to predatory lenders, but it's, in my opinion, is we need to really look into ourselves and see what are some innovative products and services that we can offer to bring in youth and better compete with the fintechs and the online banks that are already providing these services to our members. And as we do that, we're going to be helping underserved communities, and we're also going to be reaching out to young members that are much more exposed to those online financial institutions.
I couldn't agree more, because I still consider myself somewhat young in the age of what we have in the world today, and I'm pretty technical savvy, and it amazes me. My own credit union, I've talked about this so much on this podcast. I don't mention the credit union because I don't want to give them a bad rap or anything like that, but it does amaze me how far behind they are. Just with the simple little things that, from my perspective, like if it matters to me and I still am considered somewhat young, I mean, my kids it's gonna be a way bigger deal to them, right? So I think that you bring up a really, really good point in the fact like that we talk about some of the gaps that exist in the industry, but what are some strides that you feel like the industry has made from a positive perspective towards this? I think one of them is, like you mentioned, starting the Unscripted Happy Hour and doing things like that are going to engage a younger generation and make sure that their voices are heard. What are some other strides that you feel have been positive?
I remember when I started out working at the Credit Union Association of New York, one of the programs that we were rolling out was the Real Solutions program. And since then, technology has leaped forward, and more credit unions are offering services to meet these needs. Here in the state of New Mexico, in the last legislative session, credit unions actually stood up and supported having a cap on interest rate to try to rein in some of the most egregious practices by predatory lenders. And I'm just really excited to see technology partners and companies like QCash, for example, you mentioned Denise Wymore, that are coming to the table to offer seamless, innovative technological solutions to help credit unions be able to offer these services and meet these needs, because we need to crack this hack. We need to get this done. And Here's the other thing, because I think some credit unions struggle with like, well, I don't want to just enable people to continue in this cycle of not having enough cash. For example, Canopy Credit Union is doing in Spokane, Washington, is and Guadalupe Credit Union in northern New Mexico that's been doing financial coaching for many, many years. What they do is that this is a product that helps them identify who needs their help so that they're able to provide the help today that they need to get out of the having to pay predatory interest rates. But at the same time, then the credit union can identify these members and work with them to set up a plan to achieve financial freedom eventually. So I think there are a multitude of reasons why these products are really, really important, because I often like to say to people, people are more willing to talk about their sex lives than they are willing to talk about their money. Think about it. People, it's a taboo topic. They don't talk about how much they make, or they don't talk about their debt. They don't talk about any of that. So perception is reality. You see your neighbors driving these fantastic cars, so you want to have those things without having the knowledge of what you need to do in order to prepare yourself to be able to achieve financial freedom and buy, spend money prudently, plan for your future. So I understand what the hesitation in some credit unions to offering these types of products, but I truly think that they are missing an opportunity to identify people that actually need the education and the coaching and the products to break those cycles, because you might not be lending to them, but they're going to walk down the street and walk to a title lender or walk to a payday lender, predatory lender, and they're going to get money there at a much higher interest rate than you are. Or they're going to go online and they're going to open up a bank account somewhere that gives them access to their paycheck a couple of days early, and there you go. There goes your member altogether potentially, and you lose that relationship. So I think this is truly one of those products that, if done correctly, can engage the member, but also can put them on a path for you to increase engagement and identify that they need your help.
I'm glad you mentioned the idea of specifically around the idea of actually getting people to get on board with it, because I think that one of the things that's tough for me is there's so many different programs out there. And while you brought up this point through the conversation of credit unions specifically being a little bit hesitant to go about doing it, and I'm really glad that you distinguished the difference between, hey, look, like this is the start of a relationship with them, and you've got to almost look at it like that. The long-term impact of what short-term lending can do can be massive in building the right relationship to build financial freedom for others and educate them. And quite frankly, like some of the biggest banks in the world that are doing it are not educating. They're not doing that part. And that's something that credit unions, for a long time have thrived on that being part of their promise to members. So when you look at it, I like the way you position it, because it's really like the start of the relationship with a lot of these folks that you're going to be serving. What do you think are maybe like 1 to 3 or maybe 1 to 2 different ideas that credit unions could do today that could start positioning them in this realm?
First of all, I mean, the reality is most credit unions still to this day have great relationships with SEGs. And it's, can you explore the possibility of working with the payroll departments of those select employee groups, and exploring the possibility of having them advance the paycheck, like, at least the credit union get the information about how much the person's going to make so that you can advance the paycheck early. I mean, there's simple things like that. And the irony of it all, James, is the fact that many credit unions did this back in the 80s, back in the 70s. It's kind of like we're going back to our roots. We used to do a lot of these things. And I'm sure a lot of the listeners are probably thinking like, oh yeah, we used to do that. We used to do that back in the day, and for whatever reason we stopped. So I think there's an opportunity to explore things like that. I think there's an opportunity to explore the technology, the technology vendors that are out there that are helping credit unions do these things. Some leagues have started putting together groups, and in some, they never stopped having groups back from the Real Solutions days to help credit unions tackle this. And the last thing I'd say is, like, you need to really think outside the box. There are already many credit unions that are helping with advancing paychecks, for example. And then it only takes a 5-minute Google search and you can get a list of who's doing that. And maybe reaching out to those credit unions and saying, hey, how are you able to advance people's paychecks early? Reach out to credit unions that are having successful financial coaching and engagement programs with their members and find out how that's doing, how those programs are doing and how they set them up. Because all these things are going to help you have a deeper engagement with your member and really better meet the needs of those members.
Juan, I know that you're very well connected in the credit union world. I don't know a single person who doesn't know who you are, actually. So that's pretty amazing. When you talk to others about this particular topic, like what is the most common challenge that you find?
I think many credit unions, I mean, we're talking about small dollar loans, right? So many credit unions think of the traditional lending process that is costly. So they look at the numbers and they're like, I'd be losing money if I were to spend the time it takes to process a loan and underwrite a loan for such a small amount for such a small term. But the reality is the conversations that I typically have is, how can we think outside the box and address these needs while not breaking the bank and helping you create a sustainable program? Because once again, it may be something that you do with your strongest select employee groups. It may be that you partner with that has a technological tool so that you don't have to manually underwrite these loans, so that you can streamline it and do it in an efficient way that saves money and doesn't break the bank and actually makes you money. So it's about thinking outside the box and utilizing technology and or going back to our roots so that you can create a program that doesn't require you to have every member that needs a short-term loan come to your office and apply for a signature loan for $300 and have their credit pulled. Because guess what? That's not competing with what's out there. I mean, the reality is you can walk to a payday lender, you can walk to a title lender, you can go online and go to one of these online banks and get money like that. So those are the people that we're competing with, not the traditional loan that most people may think about when they think of small dollar loans.
I have one more question for you as it relates to serving the communities, especially the underserved communities. There's barriers that exist there. So how can this in particular address some of those barriers? I know you trickled some of that into the conversation here, but I'd like to focus a little bit just on that area.
Credit unions have to remain relevant, like I said early in the beginning of the conversation. And that means making sure that you're meeting the needs and exceeding the needs and the expectations of your communities. And I think as you build a program that to serve the underserved and build that engagement with your community, you need to create you have to have innovative solutions to address their needs and bring them in. So this is just one example of the types of things that credit unions can consider doing. The reality is that a lot of underserved folks are living paycheck to paycheck. So this is the way for you to bring them in, not only to save them money, but to engage with them and for you to create the relationships that you need to have in order for you to meet their needs. But it's just one piece of the puzzle. I mean, I think there are many other ways that this product could open up doors. Earlier, I mentioned the fact that these could be leads for financial coaching. The reality too is that there are funds available for you to launch these types of programs, things like CDFI grants, Community Development Financial Institutions grants, that are available for you to look at creating programs like this. And when you, as a credit union, go to a nonprofit or a potential community partner that you're trying to have establish a relationship with, they are to some degree expecting you to have innovative solutions for their clients, for the clientele that they work with. And these are just perfect examples of the innovation that they're hoping you have.
It's interesting because so much of it, if you really think about it, like the credit union movement really has a way of narrowing it down into trying to create good experience for our members, but serve the community and keeping them loyal. But on the consumer end, as a member, loyalty is very unique in today's world. It's not really a matter of loyalty anymore. It's a matter of convenience. That's ultimately what matters to us as consumers. And if we can get that convenience alongside building a loyalty program that exists. But I think one of the things that's really interesting to me is this idea of convenience with credit unions. Like if the credit union movement can build a relationship with the underserved and they can break down this barrier, and it's going to create also a loyalty movement where they are going to be loyal, but now they're also being served with the convenience that they're looking to have with a financial institution. And then on top of that, you throw in the financial education piece. I just think it's a perfect recipe to try and serve the folks that need it most. And I love how you framed it up in this episode, and I can't wait for this to go live. Juan, it has been an absolute pleasure to have you on the show. We already said this, but just as a recap, you find Juan on LinkedIn. Juan, thank you for joining us. Thank you for talking about this. And yeah, thank you.
It's been a pleasure, James. And one final comment I would leave is that especially with younger consumers and younger members, they're expecting to bank with and have a relationship with a financial institution that's creating change, that's involved in the community, and that is offering great solutions. And that's what credit unions are all about. I mean, that is the true definition of our movement. That's the roots of our movement. So I think we need to think outside the box. We need to come up with innovative solutions to really be out there. And then we need to do a better job of telling our story, because that is going to be key to lowering the age of our members. And I think we need to do a better job as a movement of working collaboratively and cooperating with other credit unions as we come up with these solutions. Thank you for this interview, and it was really, truly a pleasure being here with you, James.
Likewise, Juan. We will see you on the Unscripted Happy Hour, that's for sure.